Hi, and welcome to Run Tall with Tim, the YouTube channel that's dedicated to all runners everywhere. I'm Tim, and I upload new running videos every single week. Today, I've got a really fun shoe comparison for you. I'm putting two carbon-plated racing shoes up head-to-head against one another. One by Adidas, their Adios Pro, and the other by Hoka, their Rocket X. To do that, or to help me with that, I came down to my local high school track. I'm doing some speed work today. So the format for today's workout's really pretty simple. I'm going to warm up for a mile, and then I'm going to run for 2.5 minutes at a really hard pace, and then I'm going to recover for 2.5 minutes, and then I'm going to repeat that process 7 different times. I'm going to run in the Adios Pro first, and I'm going to actually keep those on my feet for the first 4 speed repeats, and then I'm going to switch up and put on the Hoka Rocket X for the last 3. That way I can get a really good sense when I switch up shoes like that. Immediately I know I can tell what some of the biggest differences are, and so I'm going to be excited to share with you what I found out from today's workout. But in the meantime, I'm going to do my warm-up, so I'm going to jog around the track here a few times. I will catch some GoPro video for you of me warming up prior to the workout, just so that you can see what it looks like to run in both of these shoes. But then, after that, we're going to come back together, and I'll be excited to tell you what I've learned about the Adios Pro and the Hoka Rocket X. So I had a lot of fun down at the track, running speed repeats in both of these shoes. A couple things I want to mention before we get rolling. First, and I failed to mention this in the intro, but if you want to skip around in this video and maybe save yourself a little bit of time, I tried to make that easy for you. If you open a description, you'll see where I've laid out some chapters for you. Just click on the timestamp for the part of the video that you want to watch, and it's going to take you right there. Secondly, I did do reviews of each of these shoes individually. So if you want to check those out, I'll put a link in the description below. So let's just dive right in. We'll start with the cost. Now, with the Adios Pro, it costs $200 US. And with the Hoka Rocket X, they cost $180. So they're pretty comparable in terms of cost. In terms of availability, not at all. It took me a long time to get a pair of the Adios Pro. Every time I tried to pick up a pair, they were sold out before I could get it in my shopping cart and check out. Not the case with the Rocke X. They're pretty easy to find, and they have been readily available since they were released to the public. I think that was around October, end of October, something along those lines. So if you're interested in picking up a pair of the Rocke X, shouldn't have any trouble. If you want to get the Adios Pro, you might just keep in mind it's going to take a little while, I would imagine, to secure a pair for yourself. I just happened to get lucky and find some at Running Warehouse when they put out the new color, which I think is awesome, by the way. So I guess from that, if I look at it from that point of view, I really like that bright yellow, maybe more so than some of the other colorways that they released earlier on. So I guess, it might have been worth the wait. Nah, I would have rather had them a few weeks ago. So anyway, so let's just talk about the upper on both of these shoes. Now, it was cool when I was out running. It was in the 20s. The feels like temperature was in the teens, so definitely a colder day to run. And I felt it on both of these shoes. My toes did get cold, even though I was putting out a pretty hard effort. It still was pretty chilly underfoot. Lots of breathability here. Now let's just look at the Adios Pro. So let's zoom in on that upper, and you're going to see that it has that Cellermesh material that I was first introduced to with the Adizero Pro, which allows a ton of airflow. And there's really no plastic overlays on the shoe at all. It's a stripped down racing shoe, what you would expect from a carbon plated racing shoe. And we can see that all the way back to the heel counter. Now, if we flip over and we look at the Hoka Rocket X, very similar that way, but I would say, and it is breathable. And I noted that when I first reviewed the shoe that it was a cooler day when I ran in those for the first time. I think it was very late October, maybe very first of November. In Michigan, that's when the cool weather really starts to hit in. But I knew as soon as I took off, I could feel that cold rush of air through that toe box. Now, the biggest difference for me, when I switched up shoes, the airflow with the Rocket X, I felt primarily through the toe box. With the Adios Pro, I could feel it under the entire shoe. So I'm talking about that midfoot, even in the heel area. Boy, it felt cool all over in that shoe. Way different experience than the Rocket X, which, it does have more material in that heel counter, so it's not surprising. They've got a lot of structure back there where the Adios Pro does not. So it shouldn't be surprising, but it was certainly worth noting. So if you're in a hot area and you're looking for the coolest carbon-plated racing shoe underfoot between these two, the Adios Pro is the way to go. Let's take a look now at the eyelet chains on both of these shoes. There's really not a whole lot going on here in terms of any kind of wow factor. I will say though, with the Adios Pro, you have a little bit of customization because they added that extra set of eyelet chains on the outside. So if you want to lace up your shoe a little bit differently to try to get a more locked down feeling, or just a different feeling underfoot, you have that option here. But both are, they do an adequate job. They're both reinforced materials, both above and within the cage area. So you don't really have to worry about either shoe ripping out. It's going to be pretty durable that way. And the tongue on both of these shoes with the Rocket X, it's a semi-gusset on both sides. It is a kind of a mesh material to try to allow that breathability. And I didn't have any issues with that at all. It felt really good. The tongue laid flat on my foot. No problems. With the Adios Pro, the only issue that I have, and it's got a semi-gusset on one side and the other side is completely sewed in. But what happens when you go to put that shoe on, I grab a hold of the tongue, and kind of lift that up to slide my foot in. And of course I grab the heel and try to, get my foot to slide down into the shoe. But when you grab a hold of that tongue, that semi-gusseted side folds in on itself. And I have to really kind of negotiate with the shoe and a little bit of tugging and pulling here and there to really get it underfoot. So part of the reason that I ran in the Adios Pro first when I was out doing that speed workout is after I ran the first 4, I knew I was going to want to switch up shoes quickly. I had 2.5 minutes of recovery time between those runs, and I didn't want to have to fool around trying to get those Adios Pro on because I knew it was going to take longer than it was to just slip my foot inside the Rocket X because they do go on much quicker than the other shoes. The only other issue, however, is the Rocket X has all of this extra lace, and It's not an issue if you use a runner's knot, but I don't. So, I had to triple knot those shoes so those laces weren't dragging the ground. But other than that, they perform really well that way. And they both felt really snug, secure across the midfoot of the shoes. With the Adios Pro, that upper material is more plastic-like, and it feels very plastic-like, where the Rocke X it's still kind of got that plastic feel to it, but I would say it's softer feeling. So let's look at the padding around the heel collar on both of these shoes, as well as the heel tab. And you can see that, there's very minimal padding around the Adios Pro, as it should be. They're trying to keep the weight down. But it was more than adequate. I was comfortable. I didn't have any issues with that at all. Lots more padding around the heel collar and tab for the Rocke X, which, that could come into play. If you're going to use either of these shoes for a marathon distance, that's a long ways, and you might find that little extra padding around those areas to be a benefit to you on those longer distance run experiences that you may have. So just something that you might want to keep in mind. And since I didn't mention the weight of these shoes, so let's just talk about that now, since we were talking about the padding and how that might impact weight. For me, these two shoes basically weighed the same, but there's a caveat there. So with the Hoka Rocket X, it comes in at 7.4 ounces on my scales, and that's for a men's size 9. With the Adios Pro, they came in at 7.5 ounces on my scale, but that's for a men's size 8.5. And I did go down a half size, and that's because I had already experienced the Adizero Pro earlier in the summer, and I felt like I was right on the cusp of being able to go down a half size, and especially for a racing shoe. I'd much rather it be a little snug than have it be too big for me, or have that feeling of being too big. And so I'm glad I did. It worked out perfect for me. So the Adios Pro that you see is, that I've been running in, is an 8.5 as opposed to a 9. So although they were comparable in weight for me underfoot, there is a half size difference there. So just something to note. Now let's talk about the heel counter on these shoes, because there's a stark difference here. Now with the Adios Pro, there is virtually no structure on the sides of the shoe. You can see as I pinch it here. But there is a little bit of structure. They have some plastic that goes right up the center of that heel counter. So it does hold it in place, which helps you get your shoe on, but it's not really giving you any stability structure from that regard. With the Hoka Rocket X, there's a ton of structure here. And as an overpronator, I do appreciate that. But frankly, I didn't really need any extra material in the Adios Pro to make me feel stable, because all of the stability came with the lockdown feeling across the midfoot and with their Lightstrike foam that they have underfoot. So now let's talk about that. Let's talk about the foam. There is a huge difference here. The Adios Pro has 39 millimeter stack height in the heel and a 31.5 millimeters in the forefoot. So it's got an 8.5 millimeter drop from the heel to toe. The Rocke X has 32 millimeters in the heel and 27 millimeters in the forefoot. So it has a 5 millimeter offset. Both have carbon fiber plates, but with the Adios Pro, their carbon fiber plate is only in the heel. In the forefoot, they have energy rods, and those energy rods mimic the bones in your foot structure. So if this is your foot, then those energy rods would reaching around my mic here, so they're match up with those bones, with your bone structure. I like that feeling when I was running. I didn't much more so than I thought I might. I guess I wasn't exactly sure what to expect when I took off running in those shoes, but as it turns out, it's very enjoyable to run in. With the Rocke X, they've got a full-length carbon fiber plate, and they moved it down low to the ground. And that's really comfortable. It gives you a really natural feeling through your gait cycle. Here's the biggest difference. One of the differences. Okay, first you notice right away that stack height difference. With the Rocke X, you feel like your heel, your whole foot is kind of sitting down into the foam. So it kind of wraps up around your heel, around the sides of your foot. So you're kind of like nestled in there into their EVA compressed foam. With the Adios Pro and their Lightstrike foam, you feel like you're on top of it. So there's a stark difference there. Just the feeling underfoot is quite different. And because the stack height is so different, I felt, because I ran in the Adios Pro, I think I noticed the difference more so than I would if I had put the Rocke X on first. But I felt so low to the ground. I really felt that difference in, between the two different foam heights for sure. And you notice it when you're running. So this is where the magic in the midsole happens. And I'm just, I'll cut right to the chase. The Adios Pro feels way faster underfoot. And here's why I feel that way. When I was running those speed repeats, I ran the first 4 in the Adios Pro. And, I was putting forth a pretty good effort. But I felt like when I started to get a little bit tired, and when I get tired, I think like a lot of us, you tend to kind of fall back a little bit in your running posture and striking maybe a little bit more towards the heel than you otherwise might normally do. And with that carbon fiber plate and all that foam back there, I just felt like there was a lot of help. It just kept me moving forward fast and kept my gait cycle, my foot strike. It just had everything just moving quickly. My cadence was up. So, and I just felt like it was easier. When I got in the Rocket X, I was still able to run fast. And let's face it, you can run fast in pretty much any shoe you put underfoot if you're willing to put forth, all of that energy to do it. And I was able to maintain pretty much the same pace as I was in the Adios Pro. But I just felt like I had to work harder to get there. And I wasn't getting as much help from the shoe as I was with the Adios Pro. So the magic in the midsole for me is that whole carbon plate, that tall stack height in the heel that is, has that foam has a lot of energy return. And I mentioned this when I reviewed the shoe that, that video came out Wednesday. That, when you first walk in the shoe, it's deceiving because there's a lot of cushion, especially under that midfoot and heel area. It feels really soft to walk around in. But when you take off and start running and you get up on that midfoot, forefoot area, those energy rods under your forefoot in that foam is just a tremendous amount of bounce to it. And it makes you want to go fast. It puts a real pep in your step. So I really enjoyed, running in both shoes. I think they're both great choices for, that half marathon or marathon distance. But at this point, if I had to pick between these two shoes, which one I wanted to pick up on race day for my next half marathon, I'm probably going to say adios to the Rocket X because the Adios Pro is going to be what's under or on my feet on race day. I still love running in the Rocket X. I think that Hoka has made big strides from the Carbon X. I think it's a huge update to that. It's much softer, much more natural feeling, more nimble, quicker. But I think they've still got a little ways to go to catch up to shoes like the Adios Pro. Now, just before we go, I want to flip them over and we'll take a look at the outsole. We'll just kind of see how they're doing. Now, with the Hoka Rocket X, I've got just shy of 60 miles. I don't know, 57, 58 miles. I don't know, something like that on those shoes. With the Adios Pro, I have nearly 30 miles on those already, and I've only had them a week and a half, maybe, something like that. So we can get a good sense of what that outsole rubber is doing, or at least check in on it. And you can see that they're both holding up really well. I don't see any significant signs of wear anywhere. The only thing I will note, though, with the Adios Pro, I did have it out on a day that had rained the night before, kind of snowed, but by the time I went out and run, it had just kind of gotten a little bit wet, especially in those gravelly areas that I tend to run in from time to time. And I did feel like it might have been a little slick on that dirt when it was wet. I didn't have that feeling when I was running in them the first time, but it was under much more dry conditions at that point. So that's something I'm going to keep an eye on. So when I do the 50-mile review on that shoe, that's something that I'm definitely going to be paying attention to over the next couple of weeks when I start running some more miles or putting a little more volume on these shoes. Hey, I really enjoyed making this video for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, maybe give it a thumbs up. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.